the night of a blood-red moon, funeral bells tolled, tearing apart the silence of darkness. In a dimly lit room, Nguyễn Vũ, a young journalist, jolted awake to the rattle of chains echoing from the void. From the shadows emerged a towering figure, face hidden behind a cracked iron mask, eyes burning with a ghostly green fire. His voice was deep, resonant, like a verdict from the abyss. "Your name has been written in the book of life and death." From that moment, Vũ was dragged into the whirlpool of the underworld, forced to witness tormented souls, crimson nights, villages erased in silence, and eyeless children crying in the mist. Step by step, the truth revealed itself. In order to survive, he must face the ultimate choice: to drink and forget, returning to the mortal world, or to bear the eternal chains and become the new soul-hunting judge. Chapter 1. The Night of the Summons. The night was heavy with mist. The moon hung pale above the roofs, its light shrouded as if by a veil of blood. Nguyễn Vũ, a young journalist, had just returned from an exhausting day. He collapsed onto his desk, fatigue weighing down his eyelids. But then, clang, 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 the sound of iron chains echoed from the corner of the room. Vũ jolted awake, heart pounding, eyes darting frantically. He saw nothing, only darkness, and the faint, sickly glow of the moon seeping through the window. Yet the sound grew louder, nearer. A cold wind swept through the room, and with it came a stench of rot, as though something had crawled out from an unmarked grave. In the shadow of the wall, a figure emerged, cloaked in black, tall and thin, face hidden behind a cracked iron mask. His eyes, when they glowed beneath the mask, were not human. They burned with a cold, ghostly flame. Vu's throat tightened. He tried to shout, but no sound came. His body froze, as if bound by unseen chains. The figure spoke, his voice low, resonant, echoing like a verdict from the abyss. "Nguyễn Vũ, your name has been recorded in the book of the dead." Vũ trembled violently. His mind spun. "No, I'm still alive. I'm not supposed to." The figure raised the chain in his hand. The sound of links clashing rang like the toll of a funeral bell. "I am the soul-hunting judge. I have come to summon you." The chain shot out, wrapping tightly around Vu's wrist. A searing cold invaded his flesh, burning through his veins. His eyes widened as he saw blood-black symbols etching themselves across his skin. Crawling like living worms, he screamed, but the scream was swallowed by darkness. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the figure's eyes, deep, merciless, and infinite, like the gates of hell yawning open. Chapter 2. The Judgment of the Dead. When Nguyễn Vũ opened his eyes again, the world around him was no longer his room. A vast plain stretched endlessly, desolate and cold. The sky was a sheet of gray, swirling with clouds the color of ash. The earth beneath his feet was cracked and barren, littered with broken tombstones and charred remnants of coffins. The air was heavy with the stench of decay. Every breath choked his lungs. The figure in the iron mask stood before him. Chains rattled in his hand, their ghostly fire burning blue-green. "Where is this?" Vũ stammered, voice shaking. "This is the threshold of the dead," the judge answered, his voice cold, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. "The place where wandering souls are brought before judgment." Suddenly, the ground quivered. From the fissures crawled out countless pale hands, grasping and clawing. One by one, distorted figures pulled themselves up, souls with hollow eyes, faces twisted in agony, mouths forever open in a silent scream. They dragged their broken bodies across the plain, kneeling before the judge. Their cries erupted all at once. "Judge us! Judge us!" Nguyễn Vũ collapsed, hands pressed to his ears. The cacophony pierced his skull like needles. The masked figure raised his chain high. Ghostly flames burst forth, lighting up the desolate sky. His voice roared like thunder. "Those who lived unjustly, who fed on blood and lies, your sins follow you beyond the grave. There is no escape." The chain cracked down. Ghostly fire erupted, engulfing the crawling souls. Their screams echoed like the tearing of flesh, as one by one they were dragged into the abyss beneath the earth. Vu's face drained of blood. His mind reeled in horror. He finally understood. This being was not a simple spirit, not a demon. It was a judge from the underworld itself. The judge turned to him, those burning eyes fixing him in place. "And you, Nguyễn Vũ, though your heart still beats. Your name is already written in the book. You are not here by chance. Vũ staggered back, shaking his head in denial. No, I haven't died yet. This isn't real. The judge's voice rumbled like the tolling of a funeral bell. The living and the dead are bound by fate. Once your name is inscribed, there is no turning back. Chains slithered forward, rattling, coiling around Vu's body. Cold fire bit into his skin, dragging him closer. And from the void, the endless wailing of lost souls rose once again, drowning his cries. Chapter 3. The Book of the Dead. The chains tightened, dragging Nguyễn Vũ across the barren earth. His body scraped against jagged stones, each movement tearing into his flesh. He screamed, but his voice was drowned out by the endless wailing around him. Ahead, in the midst of the desolate plain, rose a massive altar of black stone. Upon it rested a book so enormous it seemed to be carved from the bones of giants. The cover was bound in iron, etched with symbols that bled red as if alive. The judge strode forward, dragging Vũ like a prisoner. He raised his hand, and the colossal book opened with a deafening groan. Pages fluttered in the windless air, each inscribed with names written in blood. Vu's stomach twisted. He recognized the names, neighbors, acquaintances, people from his town, each name followed by a date and a cause of death. The judge spoke, his voice like the verdict of heaven and hell combined. This is the book of the dead. Every soul, every breath, every death is recorded here. There is no mistake, no escape. A gust of wind swept through. The pages flipped violently until they stopped, on a single line glowing red. Vũ forced himself to look, and there, scrawled in bleeding letters, was his own name, Nguyễn Vũ, to die on the night of the Ghost Gate. His knees gave out. No, this is wrong. I'm still alive. This can't be written already. The judge turned his burning gaze upon him. Once a name is recorded, fate has been sealed. The living body you carry now is but a fleeting shadow. You belong to the underworld. Vũ shook his head frantically, tears streaming down his face. I refuse to die. The judge raised his chain, its links glowing brighter. Refusal means nothing before the laws of death. The only choice left to you is how you will face it. The chain lashed out. Fire and shadow wrapped around Vu's chest, constricting him until he could barely breathe. His vision blurred, and as he slipped into darkness once more, the last thing he saw was the book closing shut with a thunderous sound, sealing his fate. Chapter 4. The Ghost Gate. When Vũ awoke, the air around him was no longer the barren plain. Instead, he stood before a towering gate forged of black stone and rusted iron. The gate was carved with grotesque faces, mouths open in eternal screams, eyes rolling in silent torment. Above it, 3 characters glowed crimson, dripping like fresh blood. Kai Mon Quan, the Ghost Gate. From behind the gate came a sound like thousands of chains dragging across the ground, accompanied by the ceaseless cries of the dead. The wind here was sharp, carrying the stench of corpses, sulfur, and forgotten graves. The judge raised his chain, pointing at the gate. This is where souls must pass before entering the courts of hell. The gate does not open for the living, and yet, your name has been written. Tonight, it opens for you. The massive doors groaned as they shifted. From the cracks seeped black mist, thick and foul, writhing like snakes. Vũ staggered back, his body trembling violently. From the mist, figures began to crawl forth. Some were corpses with half-rotten faces. Others were shadows with hollow eyes, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide as they wailed. A tide of the restless dead spilled through the opening, their hands clawing toward him. Vũ screamed, stumbling. No, stay away from me. I don't belong here. The judge stood unmoving, his voice cold and merciless. Every soul written must face the gate. Even if you deny, even if you resist, the chains of death will not release you. The dead surged closer. Their touch was ice, their grasp filled with despair. They whispered in broken voices. Come with us, join us, the living cannot escape. Vũ struggled, tears streaming down his face, his voice cracking with fear. Please, someone, help me. But only the judge answered, his eyes burning coldly beneath the mask. There is no salvation beyond the Ghost Gate, only judgment. The gate opened wider, the darkness poured out like a flood. Chains rattled, and Vũ felt himself dragged toward the abyss. as if the very earth had turned against him. His scream echoed, swallowed whole by the yawning mouth of the ghost gate. Chapter 5. The River of Blood. Dragged through the ghost gate, Nguyễn Vũ collapsed onto cold, jagged stone. The air was thick, damp, and suffocating. Before him stretched a river the color of congealed blood, its surface bubbling and churning with a nauseating stench. The waters writhed, and within them countless faces surfaced, souls screaming, eyes bulging, mouths vomiting crimson foam before being pulled under again. Their arms clawed skyward, only to be dragged back into the depths by unseen hands. The judge's voice echoed, solemn and pitiless. This is the river of blood. Here are drowned the souls of those who killed, who shed innocent lives. They must writhe in the filth they created, until eternity erases their rage. Vu's stomach lurched. He staggered back, clutching his chest, bile rising in his throat. The cries from the river clawed into his skull, filling him with despair. Suddenly, a wave surged. From it rose a body swollen and grotesque, its flesh pale and bloated, its eyes, bloodshot and mad, locked onto him. With a screech, the corpse lunged from the riverbank, clawing toward Vu. He shrieked, falling onto his back. The stench of rot and iron overwhelmed him. The creature's fingernails, jagged and black, scraped across the stone near his face. Before it could seize him, the judge struck his chain. The iron links lashed out, coiling around the corpse. Ghostly fire flared, consuming the abomination in green flame. It shrieked, body splitting open, before being dragged back into the river's depths. The judge turned, voice deep and resonant. Remember this, Nguyễn Vũ. Every drop of blood spilled by human hands returns here. The river does not lie. Vu shook violently, tears streaming down his face. Why are you showing me this? I didn't kill anyone. The judge's burning eyes fixed on him. You think yourself innocent, but sin takes many forms. Abandonment, betrayal, neglect. The blood on your hands may not yet flow, but its weight is already written. Vu's breath caught in his throat. His mind reeled. The chains rattled ominously, and the cries of the river rose louder, as though calling his name. He collapsed to his knees, horror flooding his soul. Chapter 6. The Hall of Mirrors. The judge pulled Nguyễn Vũ forward, his chains clattering across the blackened ground. Soon they arrived at a cavernous hall, its walls lined with towering mirrors. Each mirror shimmered faintly, though the hall was cloaked in shadow. Vu swallowed hard, his voice trembling. What is this place? The judge's tone was cold and absolute. This is the Hall of Mirrors. Every soul that passes here must look upon itself, not as it wished to be, but as it truly was. At his words, the mirrors began to glow. One by one, reflections flickered to life, yet they did not show Vu's present body. Instead, scenes from his past appeared. He saw himself as a boy, turning away when his sick mother called for water. He saw himself laughing with friends while she coughed alone in the dark. He saw himself ignoring neighbors in need, chasing stories for ambition, not compassion. Each image stabbed into him like a blade. No, stop, that's not who I am. That's not me anymore, Vu screamed, covering his face. The judge's eyes flared with cold fire. The mirrors do not deceive. They show the truth your heart cannot deny. Every neglect, every cruelty, every selfish choice, it is all written in you. From the other mirrors rose the reflections of countless souls, twisted and broken. A man who had stolen from the poor, now gnawing at his own fingers. A woman who had poisoned her husband, her reflection laughing with a cup in hand. Soldiers cutting down villagers, their blood forever staining their faces. Their reflections stepped out of the glass, surrounding Vu. The hall filled with screams, laughter, the cries of children, the moans of the betrayed. Vu fell to the ground, clutching his head, his mind shattering under the weight. Please, I can't bear it anymore. The judge lifted his chain, his voice booming like thunder. No soul can flee from itself. The Hall of Mirrors strips away every mask, until only truth remains. The chains lashed, the mirrors cracked, the screaming reflections were pulled back into the glass, their cries echoing into silence. Vu lay trembling on the floor, his face wet with tears, his soul heavy with guilt. The judge spoke one final time, his tone like a tomb closing. Hell is not far away. Hell lies within the sins you carry. Chapter 7. The Abandoned Hospital. After the night of chaos at the graveyard, the judge brought Nguyễn Vũ to the outskirts of the city, where an old hospital stood in ruins. Locals whispered that this place was cursed. Patients had vanished without a trace. Nurses and doctors had disappeared, and those foolish enough to enter were never seen again. The sky was heavy with clouds, the moon smothered by shadows. The hospital loomed like a giant corpse, its walls cracked and stained, its windows shattered, hallways stretching endlessly into blackness. The judge halted, chains rattling faintly, ghostly fire flickering along the links. "A murderous soul lingers here," he said. "Once, he was a doctor who butchered patients in secret. Now, he prowls these halls, feeding on those who wander too close." Vu's stomach turned cold. He followed, each step crunching on broken tiles, the sound sharp and brittle like snapping bones. Inside, rusted beds lay toppled, IV stands dangled with dried, clotted blood. The air reeked of iron and rot. Somewhere in the dark, a wheelchair squeaked, wheels screeching across stone in slow, agonizing rhythm. Then, laughter broke the silence, low, rasping, insane. "Have you come for surgery? Ha ha ha." From the shadow of an old operating room, a figure emerged. He wore a surgeon's coat, soaked in blood. His face was ashen, his eyes bulging with madness. In his hand gleamed a scalpel, its blade rusted and dripping with blackened gore. He grinned, lips splitting, voice shrill. "Everyone here is my patient, and every patient must die on the table." Vu staggered back, heart pounding. From the rooms around them, more figures shuffled forth, headless patients in bloodied gowns, their hands twitching, their necks spurting black mist. The hospital groaned like a tomb, every shadow shifting with movement. The judge stepped forward, eyes burning cold. He swung the chain, its links slithering across the corridor, bursting into green flame. The murderous doctor shrieked. He raised his scalpel high, and with a howl the walls cracked apart. From the gaping fissures stretched countless arms, pale and rotten, reaching out to seize. One seized Vu by the ankle, its grip icy as stone, dragging him toward the floor. He cried out in terror, thrashing, as the doctor's twisted face loomed close. The scalpel glinted. The mad doctor hissed into his ear, "Your turn on the table, little patient." Chapter 8. The Mad Doctor. The scalpel's edge gleamed inches from Nguyễn Vu's face. He screamed, kicking wildly as the pale, rotting hands dragged him down into the cracked tiles. But before the blade could strike, the judge's chain cracked like thunder. Green fire erupted, severing the arms that bound Vu. The corridor blazed with ghostly light, shadows writhing as though in agony. The mad doctor shrieked, his eyes bulging, spit flying from his gaping mouth. "No, they're my patients, mine." He lunged at the judge with inhuman speed, scalpel slashing arcs of black smoke through the air. The walls trembled, surgical lamps fell crashing, rusted instruments scattered and clanged. The judge's mask glinted coldly. He swung the chain, each strike shattering the phantoms that poured from the rooms. Screams filled the air, patients missing limbs, torsos split open, faces sewn shut, all dragged back into the darkness by the chain's fire. Still, the doctor persisted, his body swelled grotesquely, veins bulging, skin splitting as more hands and faces burst out from within him, patients he had butchered, now fused into his flesh. They cried and howled, yet he roared over them, "I am their savior, their pain is mine to command." The judge's voice thundered through the hospital. "Nguyễn Vũ, look. This is what becomes of a soul drowned in murder and madness." Vu clutched his ears, his vision blurring. He saw not only the monster but flashes of its past, an ambitious surgeon. Hands once steady, who slowly turned cruel, cutting for pleasure, not for healing. The cries of the dead clung to him, shaping his twisted afterlife. The judge hurled the chain once more. It coiled around the doctor's bloated body, the ghostly flame surging higher. The monstrous form writhed, arms flailing, mouths screaming. The doctor shrieked, "No, I cannot die. I am eternal. I am." The chain constricted. Green fire engulfed him, consuming flesh, scalpel, and the countless faces embedded in his body. His scream echoed like a storm before fading into silence. The hospital fell still. The walls stopped trembling. The phantoms vanished, leaving only dust and bloodstains that would never fade. Nguyễn Vũ collapsed, gasping, clutching his chest. His body shook uncontrollably, tears streaking his face. The judge loomed over him, chain coiling slowly, embers of green flame still burning. His voice was low, implacable. This is judgment, and it has only just begun. Chapter 9. The Whispering Tombs. The night deepened as the judge dragged Nguyễn Vũ onward. The ruined hospital shrank behind them, swallowed by the fog. Ahead lay a field of tombstones, endless rows stretching into the horizon. Each stone cracked and blackened, as if struck by lightning. The air was thick with whispers. Voices drifted between the graves, low, indistinct at first, but soon sharper, clearer. Vu, Nguyễn Vũ, you belong here? He froze, his skin crawling. The voices were calling his name. Suddenly, one of the tombs split open with a groan, a skeletal hand thrust upward, followed by a half-decayed body dragging itself free. Its jaw hung loose, but when it spoke, the voice was unmistakable. It was his childhood friend, Hoang, who had drowned years ago. Vu, why didn't you save me? You stood there, you let me sink? Vu staggered back, his heart clenching. No, I tried, I couldn't, I was just a child. More tombs split open. Figures dragged themselves into the moonlight, neighbors, classmates, even strangers he vaguely remembered. Each bore wounds of their deaths, bloated faces of the drowned, burned flesh of the perished, broken skulls of the murdered. All of them spoke at once, their voices like knives. You abandoned us, you forgot us, you carry our deaths. The judge stood silent, his chain rattling. Vu fell to his knees, clutching his ears, screaming, "Stop, stop, I'm not guilty of this. I didn't kill anyone." But the dead did not relent. They surrounded him, skeletal hands reaching, rotting mouths whispering his name again and again. The judge finally spoke, his voice cold as the grave. Every soul you touched, every life tied to yours, leaves a mark. To live is to bear responsibility. You cannot deny it. The chain lashed out. Green fire burst forth, striking the swarm of dead. They shrieked and fell back into their tombs, the earth sealing over them once more. The whispers faded, leaving only silence and the faint toll of a funeral bell carried on the wind. Nguyễn Vũ collapsed against the cold ground, tears and sweat mingling. His heart was heavy, suffocated by guilt he could no longer escape. The judge turned, his gaze implacable. You think death is distant, but death has always been beside you, step for step. Tonight, you hear its voice. Chapter 10. The Child Without Eyes. The night grew colder. Mist rolled thick across the graveyard as the judge led Nguyễn Vũ deeper into the dark. The tombstones gave way to a small, crooked house standing alone, its roof caved in, its walls mottled with mold. A faint sound drifted from within. He, the laughter of a child. Vu froze, his blood turning to ice. The judge's eyes glowed faintly behind the mask. An infant spirit lingers here, one abandoned, left to die before it could even breathe freely. Its hatred has chained it to this place. The laughter grew louder, echoing from every corner of the ruin. Slowly, the door creaked open, though no hand touched it. Inside, the shadows stirred. From the darkness crawled a small figure. A child, no older than 2, dressed in tattered cloth. Its skin was gray and cracked, its limbs twisted unnaturally. Worst of all, its face. Where its eyes should have been, there were only 2 gaping, black holes. "Play with me," it whispered, its voice thin, broken. Vu stumbled back, his throat constricting. "No, oh God." The child's mouth split into a grin too wide for its face. From the sockets poured streams of black liquid that slithered like worms. It toddled forward, giggling as the shadows behind it thickened, taking the shape of other children, faceless, eyeless, their tiny bodies jerking unnaturally. "Play with us, forever," they sang in unison, voices shrill like rusted bells. Vu clutched his head, screaming. The children surged forward, their hands icy, their eyeless faces pressed close. The judge swung his chain, green fire bursting forth. The flames struck the eyeless children, their bodies shrieking as they dissolved into smoke. But the first child, the one with the black sockets, did not vanish. It turned its hollow gaze toward the judge, and from its mouth poured a howl that split the night. "Why didn't she want me? Why did she throw me away?" The judge's voice thundered. "You were abandoned in life. But in death, you cling to hate. Your time has come. The chain coiled, wrapping around the small body. Green fire erupted, engulfing it completely. The child screamed, its voice twisting between rage and sorrow, before finally dissolving into sparks. Silence fell. Vu collapsed to the ground, tears streaming uncontrollably. He whispered through sobs, "A child, just a child?" The judge stood unmoving, his chain still smoldering. His voice was cold, yet heavy with something darker. Innocence does not spare a soul. The law of death judges all equally. Chapter 11. The Cursed Village. After the night of horrors, the judge led Nguyễn Vũ to a desolate valley. The moon hung low, blood red, staining the earth beneath in crimson. At the heart of the valley lay a village long abandoned. The houses were little more than blackened ruins. Their roofs collapsed, their walls gnawed by time. Not a single bird sang, not a single breeze stirred. Only silence and the faint stench of rot. This village, the judge intoned, was erased in one night. Men, women, and children, all slaughtered in silence. Their spirits still linger, bound by hatred. As they stepped onto the broken road, the air thickened, doors creaked open, shadows emerged from the ruins. Pale villagers, their faces warped, their eyes hollow yet burning faintly red. They shuffled forward, muttering in broken voices. "Why did you let us die? Why didn't anyone save us? Why do we still suffer?" Their whispers grew into screams. The ground shook. From the fields, more souls clawed their way up. Bodies half burnt, throats slit, bellies torn open, their bloodied faces turned toward Vu. He screamed, stumbling back, "No, I don't know you. I didn't do this." But the villagers closed in, their hands reaching, their eyes accusing. The judge raised his chain. Green fire lashed out, scorching a path through the swarm. Souls shrieked as they were dragged back into the earth. Yet the fire could not hold them all. The village itself seemed alive. Walls bleeding, the soil groaning. From the largest ruin emerged a massive figure, a twisted amalgamation of villagers fused together. Dozens of faces screaming from its flesh, arms sprouting in every direction. It bellowed, shaking the valley. "All must die with us." The monster surged forward, its many arms flailing. The judge's eyes flared cold. He swung his chain, fire roaring higher than the houses. "Nguyễn Vũ," his voice thundered, "behold the price of massacre. This is hatred made flesh." The clash shook the valley. Souls shrieked, flames raged, ruins crumbled. Vu fell to his knees, clutching his head, his mind collapsing under the horror. Through the chaos, the monster's many mouths roared, drowning out all else. Chapter 12. The Night of Burning Souls. The cursed village howled with fury. The monstrous amalgamation of villagers surged forward, its dozens of faces screaming in agony. Arms stretched from its body, clawing at the air, dragging corpses from the ground to hurl at the living. Nguyễn Vũ collapsed, pressing his hands to his ears. The shrieks of the damned pierced his skull, threatening to drive him mad. The judge raised his chain, his voice booming, "Return to dust, and let the flames of judgment consume you." With a swing, the chain burst into a wall of green fire. It wrapped around the monster, coiling tighter, igniting each of the screaming faces. The creature thrashed wildly, its many mouths roaring in defiance. "No, we will not vanish. You let us die." The fire roared louder, each face burst, one after another, until only a single, enormous mouth remained, gaping wide, vomiting streams of blood. The judge's eyes glowed cold beneath his mask. Hatred cannot endure against the law of death. The chain constricted, the monster split apart, exploding in a torrent of blood and ash. The souls wailed one final time before being dragged into the abyss. The entire valley shook, houses crumbled to dust, the earth cracked open, swallowing the remnants of the village. In moments, nothing remained, only scorched ruins and drifting ash, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The silence was deafening. Nguyễn Vũ sat trembling, tears streaming down his face. They were slaughtered? Why does no one remember them? The judge turned, his voice steady, like stone grinding. Because the living forget, only the dead remember. That is why the chains must bind, why the law must stand. He lifted the chain, its fire flickered, illuminating the valley of ash. This is judgment. Vu wept, his body shaking uncontrollably. For the first time, he understood. There was no mercy here. No salvation. Only the endless cycle of death, hatred, and judgment. Chapter 13. The Betrayal of the Underworld. The cursed valley lay silent, reduced to ashes. Nguyễn Vũ tears had barely dried when the judge suddenly halted. His masked face turned sharply toward the horizon. From the distance came the sound of chains, but not his. These were heavier, harsher, clashing like iron grinding against bone. A figure emerged from the fog. He too bore the garments of the underworld, his body draped in dark robes, his eyes glowing crimson. In his hand trailed a chain far more jagged, dripping with black ichor. Nguyễn Vũ froze. Another judge? The iron-masked figure stiffened, his voice low and grim. No, a hell warden, one who has betrayed his oath. The newcomer laughed, his voice guttural and mocking. You still cling to law and chains, old friend? The underworld rots while you toil. I have seen the truth. Freedom lies in breaking the cycle. The soul should be released, not judged. He swung his chain. From the ground rose countless spirits, twisted and maddened, their eyes blazing red. They screamed, charging forward like a tide of carrion. The judge raised his own chain, ghostly fire erupting. The two chains clashed with a sound that split the sky. Sparks of green and black flew, burning holes into the earth. Nguyễn Vũ was thrown to the ground by the force, covering his ears as the world shook. Around him, the summoned spirits shrieked, clawing wildly. Their hands dragged at him, their mouths snapping with teeth of shadow. The traitor warden laughed madly. Join me, Vũ. You are already written in the book of the dead. Why cling to him? Together, we can unshackle all souls. Vũ screamed, thrashing against the hands that bound him. His eyes turned desperately to the judge. The judge roared, his chain blazing brighter, his voice booming like thunder. You betray the underworld and its balance. You will be erased. The clash of chains tore through the valley. Green fire battled black smoke, lighting the sky like a storm of judgment. And in that moment, Nguyễn Vũ realized, even the keepers of the underworld could fall. Chapter 14. The Secret of the Judge. After the clash with the traitorous warden, silence fell again. The night was unnaturally still. Broken ruins glowing faintly under the crimson moon. Nguyễn Vũ trembled, his breath ragged, sweat soaking his back. The judge stood motionless, his chain hung loose, its fire dimming. His eyes behind the iron mask glimmered with something strange, sorrow. Not wrath. Vũ swallowed hard, then dared to ask, Who are you really? Why do you carry out such a terrible task? The judge turned slowly. After a long silence, he raised a hand and unfastened part of his iron mask. Vu's breath caught. Beneath was not a demon's face, but that of a man. His skin was pale, marred with scars of fire. His eyes of unbearable grief. His voice was low, heavy with stone. I was once human. Vu's body went cold. The judge lifted his gaze to the blood-red moon, and his words poured forth like ash. I was a poor scholar, living in a riverside village. I loved a woman, and we vowed to wed. But on the night of our marriage, soldiers came, accusing our village of treason. They burned everything. I perished in the flames, her body in my arms as she screamed. His hand clenched around the mask. His voice cracked into a whisper of rage. In death, I was brought before Yama. He gave me a choice: vanish into oblivion, or take the chains. To hunt souls who defied the law. I chose the chains, for I still had hatred, and I still sought justice for her. His eyes flared, pain and fury mingling. But soon I learned, the law of the underworld knows no justice. Innocent souls suffer as the guilty do. Balance, they call it, yet there is no mercy. No redemption. Even I cannot be freed. Vu's heart pounded. For the first time, he saw not only the ruthlessness of the judge, but his torment, the sorrow of a soul trapped forever between life and death. Then, from the distance, a funeral bell tolled. The night split open, wind howling, clouds tearing as though the heavens themselves recoiled. The judge's chain tightened in his fist. His voice returned to its icy weight. The traitor is not alone. A greater force seeks to shatter the laws of life and death. And my past is entwined with that darkness. Vu shuddered. He understood. The judge's secret was not merely a personal tragedy. It was a thread in a web of conspiracies that threatened the entire underworld. Chapter 15. The Name in the Book of Life and Death. After hearing the judge's tale, Nguyễn Vũ was still shaken. His mind reeled between horror and pity. But before he could speak, the judge suddenly halted. Before them, rising from the cracked earth, appeared a massive book. Its cover was black as coal, edges glowing faintly as if smoldering. From its surface wafted the stench of decay. Across the cover, 3 blood-red characters burned: Book of Life and Death. The pages began to turn on their own, each one covered in crimson writing, names, birth dates, death dates, and causes of death. The blood ink dripped, the letters squirming as if alive. Vu's blood froze. His knees weakened. A cold wind surged. The pages flipped rapidly, then stopped. The judge stepped forward, eyes narrowing. A flicker of surprise crossed his gaze, then darkened into shadow. Impossible, he muttered. Vu forced himself closer. His heart stopped. There, written in fresh blood, was his own name. Nguyễn Vũ, to die at midnight, on the 15th night of the 7th lunar month. Cause of death. Dragged into the ghost gate, Vu collapsed. His body trembled violently. Sweat poured down his face. No, this isn't real. I'm still alive. I'm still here. But the letters bled. Drops of blood fell from the page, hitting the ground with soft splashes. Where they landed, maggots writhed into being, white and bloated, swarming toward his feet. The judge's chain rattled, glowing in his grip. His eyes burned into Vu as his voice struck like a gavel. You saw me on the night of the ghost gate. Your name is written. You cannot escape. Vu shook, his eyes wide with terror. You can erase it. Can't you? You can save me. The judge was silent. The chain flickered faintly. For a moment, his gaze wavered, torn between cruelty and something unspoken. Finally, he said, to erase your name would cost your soul itself. Vu's breath hitched. He knew, in that instant, that he had been bound by fate. The book slowly closed with a thunderous slam. The sound echoed like a funeral drum. Nguyễn Vũ, you now belong to the underworld. Chapter 16. The Night of the Blood Moon. That night, the sky turned crimson. A full moon loomed, glowing blood red, casting its eerie light across the land. Black clouds churned in spirals. Thunder roared. Lightning split the heavens. From every direction came the pounding of funeral drums, mixed with the wail of mourning horns. The ground trembled. Cracks split open, spewing columns of black smoke that reeked of rot and sulfur. The judge stood upon a hill, his gaze fixed toward the west. There, the earth tore apart, revealing a colossal rift. His voice was low, grim. The ghost gate has opened wide. From the rift poured forth an endless torrent of souls. No longer scattered shades, but a flood of the dead, tens of thousands. Screaming, eyes glowing red. Some crawled on all fours like beasts. Others staggered with severed heads still dangling from their necks. Some carried their own entrails in their arms. Their howls filled the night. Villages nearby erupted in chaos. Peasants fled, only to be dragged back into the dark. Children were seized by pale hands and pulled screaming into the mist. Whole fields ignited with ghostly green flames, as corpses clawed out of the soil, shuffling into the living world. Nguyễn Vũ stood frozen behind the judge, his heart hammering. He had never imagined the world could become hell itself. This will wipe out everything, he whispered. Suddenly, a voice laughed, rasping, triumphant. From the blood-red sky descended the traitor Hell Warden. Vast black wings spread from his back, his eyes burning with hatred. Behind him surged an army of shadow soldiers, their bodies dripping with gore. He roared, his voice shaking the heavens. Yama's judgment ends tonight. From this day forth, souls will be free. No more chains. The horde shrieked in unison, their cries splitting the earth. The judge's chain blazed, ghostly fire spiraling into armor around his body. His eyes glowed cold as he spoke. You have opened the gates of hell. Traitor, your sin cannot be forgiven. 2 forces stood poised beneath the blood moon. Above, the heavens thundered. Below, the earth drowned in chaos. Vu looked around in despair. He knew this was no longer a nightmare. It was the beginning of the end, the start of the underworld's rebellion. And his fate was bound within it. Chapter 17. The Soul Torn Away. The funeral drums thundered, echoing across the blood-red sky. The ghost gate stood wide open, and the dead poured forth in endless waves. At the center of the chaos, two giants clashed, the judge and the traitorous Hell Warden. The Warden swung his blade of blood. Every strike split the air, leaving crimson rifts as though tearing reality itself. Behind him, shadow soldiers shrieked and swarmed, consuming everything in their path. The judge's chain lashed, its green fire blazing, cutting down dozens at once. But no matter how many were bound and burned, countless more surged forward. The Warden's laughter split the heavens. You can bind a few lost souls, but how will you stop 1,000? 10,000? The chain will break, and you with it. He leapt forward, his blade colliding with the chain. Sparks of red and green exploded, shaking the valley. The judge staggered back, his body shuddering under the force. Nguyễn Vũ watched in horror. Never before had he seen the judge, cold, relentless, unyielding, forced to retreat. The Warden roared, spinning his blade in a whirlwind. Red smoke coiled from it, twisting into serpents that wrapped around the judge. They constricted, choking, smothering his fire. The Warden bellowed, "You were once human. Let me tear out your soul and make you my slave." Hundreds of shadowed claws burst from the void, latching onto the judge's body. His armor of green flame cracked, fissures spreading across his spectral form. The judge dropped to one knee, his voice a rasp of defiance. "No, I cannot fall, not yet." But the darkness tightened. His chain flickered weakly, its light dying. Vũ screamed desperately, "Judge, you can't leave me. You have to fight." For the briefest moment, the judge's gaze flicked toward him. For the first time, his eyes held something human, grief and resignation. Then the Warden plunged his blade into the earth. A surge of red-black energy erupted, engulfing the judge. The ground split, the sky darkened, and the judge's form was swallowed whole. The green fire winked out. Nguyễn Vũ scream tore from his chest as he watched the only force that had held the balance between life and death vanish into darkness. Above, the Warden's laughter shook the blood moon. "Ha ha ha, the judge has fallen. The laws of hell are ashes now." Vũ collapsed to his knees, his mind numb with terror. The judge, his last shield, was gone. And with his fall, the underworld itself began to unravel. Chapter 18. The 10 Courts of Hell. The earth quaked beneath Nguyễn Vũ feet. A whirlpool of shadow opened at his side, and before he could resist, it swallowed him whole. He fell through endless dark, his screams torn away. When he awoke, he was kneeling before a massive gate of black stone. Its towering doors were carved with 1,000 screaming faces, their mouths frozen in agony. Above the gate burned 3 words in blood-red flame: Amti Deen, the Court of Hell. From within came a cacophony of sound, screams of the condemned, the crack of whips, the bubbling of boiling cauldrons, bones snapping like dry wood. On either side of the gate stood the ox-headed and horse-faced wardens, their red eyes glowing, chains and whips in hand. One glared at Vũ and rasped, "Immortal, how did you wander here?" Vũ stammered, his body trembling. I followed the judge, but now he's gone." The wardens exchanged a look, shock flashing in their eyes. One growled, "The judge? He fell during the blood moon. You did not know?" The words hit like a hammer. Vu's heart clenched. He could not deny what he had seen, the judge consumed by darkness. His fire snuffed out. The gate groaned, slowly opening. A surge of icy wind blasted outward, reeking of rot. Vũ was thrown inside, sprawling onto the stone floor. Before him stretched a vision of horror. A river of blood, souls drowning while corpse fish tore at their flesh. A vast square, where wardens dragged souls before towering thrones. On each throne sat a king, a Yama of judgment. Their faces grim, eyes blazing like suns. Tortures beyond imagination. Bodies boiled in cauldrons, torn on racks, sawn apart, their screams never ending. A whip cracked. Vũ was seized and thrown to the floor of the first court. Upon the throne sat the first Yama, his hair wild, his eyes bright like torches. His voice shook the pillars. "Mortal, how do you stand here? Alive, in the realm of the dead? Speak." Vũ wept, pressing his face to the ground. "The judge, he saved me. But now, he is gone." The hall shuddered. Whispers rose among wardens and souls alike. The Yama's gaze burned with fury. The judge has fallen, then the balance of the underworld teeters. Chaos will consume us all. A funeral drum boomed in the depths of the 10 courts, each strike like the tolling of doom. Vu raised his head, terror in his eyes. If the judge was gone, then who could stop the traitor warden and the flood of spirits pouring into the living world? Chapter 19. The Prophecy of the Fifth Court. The funeral drums thundered, echoing through the 10 courts of hell. Nguyễn Vũ was dragged forward by ox-headed wardens, chains rattling around him. They pulled him from one hall to the next. In the first court, he saw liars and the corrupt, their tongues torn out, their bodies thrown into fire. In the second court, traitors and the unfilial had their skin flayed, bound to columns of burning bronze. In the third court, murderers relived their crimes endlessly, killed, reborn, and killed again for eternity. Each sight shattered Vu's heart. His body trembled, his soul weighed down with terror. At last, he was dragged into the fifth court. Its gates loomed high, the interior bathed in dim green fire. Upon the throne sat King Yama of the fifth hall, stern and immense, his gaze piercing like spears. When Vu was forced to kneel, the king did not speak at once. He studied him for a long time. His eyes glowed, as if stripping away every layer of Vu's soul. At last, his voice rumbled like stone. "Mortal, you did not come here by accident. Your name may be written in the book, but your fate is greater still." Vu's breath caught. He stammered, shaking. I am nothing, just a journalist. I can't be what you think." The king raised his hand. Green fire surged forth, painting the air with visions. Vu saw the judge falling beneath the blood moon, his form devoured by darkness, his chain extinguished. Then, the fire shifted, showing Vu himself, bound by the very chain, spectral flames wrapping his body. The king's voice thundered, "The law does not allow a void. When one judge falls, another must rise, and you, Nguyễn Vũ, are the one chosen." The words struck him like lightning. Vu's knees buckled, tears streaming down his face. "No, I can't. I'm just human. I'll become a monster like him." The king's gaze deepened, heavy with 1,000 cycles of fate. His voice carried like a funeral bell. "You may deny it, but destiny has already begun. Either you fall and your soul is lost, or you rise and bear the chains as the new soul-hunting judge." The drums pounded, the hall trembling under their weight. Vu's vision swam. He could not tell dream from truth. But in his heart, he knew his fate was bound. His path soaked in blood and fire, haunted by the cries of the damned. Chapter 20. The Hunt in Hell. The echo of the funeral drums had scarcely faded when the sky above the fifth court split apart. Crimson cracks tore through the void, and from them poured legions of rebellious shades. They swarmed like a flood of shadows, eyes blazing red, bodies dripping with foul smoke, each scream enough to curdle blood. At their head descended the traitor Hell Warden, black wings stretching wide, a blade of blood in his hand. His laughter echoed across the court. "So this is the one chosen to replace the judge? Ha, a mere mortal wearing borrowed chains? How pitiful." Nguyễn Vũ froze, his body trembling. The warden knew. The prophecy had reached his ears. The traitor raised his blade high, his voice booming. "Kill him. Tear his soul apart before he can rise." The horde shrieked, surging toward Vu. The fifth court collapsed into chaos. Wardens fell one after another, crushed under the onslaught. Chains shattered, flames were extinguished. The souls awaiting judgment were ripped apart in the tide. Vu staggered, his breath ragged. He fled through the shattered halls. But the dead clawed at him, their icy fingers raking his flesh. Behind him, the traitor's laughter rolled like thunder. "Run, mortal, run, but you cannot outrun fate." He stumbled down a corridor lined with broken doors. From each poured the cries of the damned. Arms shot out from the darkness, skeletal and rotten, seizing at his body. One nearly tore his head away before he wrenched free, tumbling down a flight of stone steps. At the base, he saw it, a corner of shadow where something glimmered faintly. A fragment of chain, still glowing with pale green fire. His heart seized. The judge's chain. He reached for it with trembling hands. As his fingers closed around the links, the chain blazed. Ghostly fire erupted, surging into his veins, freezing and burning all at once. His scream tore through the hall. His eyes glowed green. His body convulsed as the souls bound within the chain shrieked in his mind. "Kill, Bind, tear them all, the traitor roared from above, his wings blotting out the light. His eyes burned with rage. No, he must not wield it. Tear him apart before it's too late. The horde closed in, the chain writhed in Vu's grasp. Alive, ravenous, eager to devour. And for the first time, he felt its terrible power answering his call. Chapter 21. The Unleashed Chain. The moment Nguyễn Vũ grasped the judge's chain, a freezing fire exploded through his body. His vision darkened, and within his mind erupted thousands of screaming faces, souls bound for centuries. Shrieking in unison, "Kill! Kill them all!" The chain writhed like a living serpent. Green fire flared, wrapping around Vu's body. His eyes blazed with unnatural light. His scream twisted into something no longer human. With a sweep of his arm, the chain lashed out. It extended hundreds of feet, tearing through the horde. Dozens of rebellious shades were ripped apart, bursting into ash as the fire devoured them. Vu staggered, but the power surged uncontrollably. The chain lashed again, this time leveling an entire corridor. Walls cracked, pillars shattered, and hundreds of spirits exploded into smoke. The traitor Hell Warden froze, his crimson eyes widening. That power, it truly is the judge's chain. Vu screamed, his voice raw. "Stop, I don't want this, I don't want to kill anymore." But the chain did not listen. It quivered with hunger, lashing out on its own. It struck down not only enemies, but also wardens who still fought to defend the court. One ox-headed guardian shrieked as the chain coiled around him, crushing and incinerating his form. Vu fell to his knees, tears streaming, blood pouring from his nose and mouth. No, not them. They weren't enemies. The souls within the chain howled, urging him to slaughter without end. His body convulsed, caught between his will and the weapon's rage. The traitor warden threw back his head and laughed, his voice booming across the shattered hall. "Ha ha ha, look at you, mortal. You think you can wield that chain? You are nothing but its puppet." Just as the last judge was. The chain writhed, dragging Vu's body upright. His eyes glowed brighter, consumed by fire. He felt his humanity slipping away, swallowed by the screams. In that moment, a voice echoed within his mind, cold, sorrowful, unmistakable. "Nguyễn Vũ, do you wish to be master? Or prisoner?" His heart lurched. It was the voice of the fallen judge. Chapter 22. The Encounter in the Mind. The screams of countless souls clawed at Nguyễn Vu's mind. The chain coiled around his body, its links burning into his flesh, the fire biting deeper with every breath. He fell into darkness. There was no ground, no sky, only an abyss. From every direction, pale faces emerged, mouths wide, shrieking, "Kill, kill, kill." The chain tightened, crushing his chest. His veins felt ready to burst. Then, through the blackness, a faint light appeared. From it stepped a cloaked figure. Tall, draped in shadow, half of his face was hidden behind a broken mask of iron. His eyes were deep, filled with endless grief. Vu's breath caught, his voice trembled. You're the judge?" The figure nodded slowly. His voice was heavy, sorrowful. "Yes, once, I bore the chain. For centuries I carried its weight. It devoured me, piece by piece, until nothing human remained. And now, it has chosen you." Vu shook his head violently, tears spilling down his face. "No, I don't want this power. It only kills, it doesn't save anyone." The judge's gaze hardened. The chain does not kill by itself. It feeds on the will of its bearer. I was consumed because I surrendered. But you still have a choice. The screaming of the souls grew louder, drowning his words. They pressed closer, clawing at Vu, whispering in frenzy, "Don't listen, let go, become one with us." Vu clutched his head, kneeling, his voice raw. "I can't, I'm just a man. I can't carry this." The judge grasped his shoulder. His hand was cold as stone, but steady. "You can. The chain will either consume you, or obey you. There is no third path. Decide, Nguyễn Vũ, will you become prisoner, or master?" The abyss trembled, the chain coiled tighter, blood bursting from Vu's skin. His scream split the void. At last, he raised his head, his eyes blazing through tears. He grasped the chain with both hands and roared, "I will not be devoured. If these souls must be bound, then I will bind them with my will." A blinding green light erupted, tearing through the abyss. The wailing souls shrieked in rage and terror as they were dragged back into the chain. Their voices faded, leaving only silence. The chain no longer writhed. It coiled obediently around Vu's arms. Its fire no longer ravenous but steady, like a living flame awaiting command. The judge's fading figure gave a faint, weary smile. "Good, you have chosen. From this moment, you are no longer mortal. You are the one who inherits my place, the new soul-hunting judge." His body dissolved into sparks of green fire, leaving only the echo of a funeral bell tolling through the void. Chapter 23. The Successor Rises. Nguyễn Vũ opened his eyes. The fifth court still burned with chaos, walls shattered, blood and smoke rising in torrents. But something within him had changed. The chain no longer writhed against his will. It coiled firmly around his arm, glowing with steady green fire. For the first time, it waited, not to consume, but to obey. The traitor Hell Warden hovered above the ruins, wings spread wide, his crimson blade dripping with blood. His eyes narrowed in shock. You've mastered the chain?" Vu stood tall, fire blazing in his gaze. His voice thundered across the shattered hall. "I didn't want this fate. But if the chain has chosen me, then I will use it, to punish traitors like you." The chain roared to life, unraveling like a dragon of fire. It lashed forward, striking through hordes of spirits. They shrieked, bursting into ash, their cries vanishing into silence. The warden bellowed in fury. Swinging his blade, a storm of red-black energy split the hall, sending shockwaves that hurled wardens and spirits alike into the air. But Vu planted his feet. Swinging the chain, the two forces collided. Boom! The explosion shook the entire court. Stone pillars toppled, the ceiling cracked. Green and red flames twisted together in a blinding storm. Vu staggered but held fast. Pulling the chain tight, sparks rained down as the blade clashed with the iron links. Blood poured from his mouth. But he screamed through it. "You will not tear this world apart." The warden's body twisted grotesquely, sprouting monstrous limbs, his blade blazing like molten fire. He howled, "You are no judge. You are nothing but a mortal puppet." Vu's chain ignited, splitting into countless spears of green fire. They pierced the monster's limbs one by one, dragging him back. Blood gushed, his roar shaking the heavens. And there, in the midst of ruin and flame, Nguyễn Vũ stood, torn, bloodied, but unyielding. The chain coiled around him like a serpent of judgment, his eyes burning with cold fire. At last, the successor of the soul-hunting judge had risen. Chapter 24. The Battle on Nahi Bridge. The fifth court trembled as the clash raged. The traitor Hell Warden, driven into frenzy, spread his black wings and bellowed. His body warped further, more arms sprouted from his torso, each wielding blades dripping with red smoke. "Nguyễn Vũ," he roared, "do you think the chain makes you a judge? I will break you, and shatter the law itself." With a single strike, he split the ground. A vast crack opened, spewing torrents of tortured souls. The current of shadows surged, sweeping Vu and the warden alike out of the fifth court. They were carried into a place older than the courts, a place dreaded even in whispers, Nahi Bridge, the crossing over the river of forgetfulness. The bridge stretched endlessly, its stones blackened by centuries of souls. Beneath it churned the Vong Suyen River, red and thick, filled with countless faces writhing in torment. From its depths rose skeletal hands, clawing at the air, desperate to drag anything down. The warden landed at one end, wings spread wide. He raised his crimson blade, striking at the bridge. The stones cracked, fragments tumbling into the river. The souls below surged upward, gnashing and wailing. He laughed madly. If this bridge collapses, the boundary of life and death will be erased. The living and the dead will drown together in chaos. Vu staggered to his feet, his chain blazing, wrapping itself around the bridge's supports to keep them from crumbling. He screamed, voice raw, "I won't let you destroy the balance." The warden descended upon him, arms and blades slashing in a storm of fury. Vu swung the chain, flames bursting as iron met blood. The bridge shook violently under their battle, stones cracking, souls screaming from below. The clash of green and crimson lit the night. Spirits swarmed the bridge, clawing at Vu from every side. He spun, his chain sweeping them away. But for every dozen destroyed, more clawed their way up from the river. The warden rose above him, wings spread like a god of ruin. His voice thundered, "Fall with this bridge, mortal, be swallowed into the river of eternity." Vu's body ached, his blood soaked the stones, but his eyes burned with fire. He roared, "Better to fall than let you consume the world. If you want to end this bridge, you'll end with me." The chain blazed brighter than ever before, its fire wrapping the bridge in green light. Below, the river boiled, the hands of the damned reached higher, eager to devour both victor and vanquished. The fate of Nehi Bridge trembled on the edge of collapse. Chapter 25. The final battle on Nehi Bridge. Nehi Bridge shook with deafening force. Stones cracked and fell into the churning river below, where countless souls leapt upward, gnashing and screaming, desperate to drag the living into their eternal torment. Nguyễn Vũ stood bloodied in the center of the bridge, the chain coiled around him, its green fire blazing like a star. Across from him, the Hell Warden's body twisted into a monstrous form, sprouting 1,000 arms, each gripping a crimson blade. His eyes burned like molten coals as he bellowed, "The laws of the underworld will perish. I will rule both realms." Vu's breath came ragged, his body broken, but his voice thundered back. "Only a madman would turn the world into hell. Tonight, you end here." The Warden unleashed a storm of blades. Crimson energy tore through the air, splitting stone, sending shards raining into the river. Vu roared, swinging the chain. It split into countless spears of green fire. Piercing through the storm, the collision of crimson and green erupted in a blinding explosion, tearing the bridge apart. Boom! Half the bridge collapsed into the river. Souls swarmed upward, their hands dragging at the debris, devouring it hungrily. The Warden's monstrous body loomed high, arms flailing. He struck again, blades crashing against the chain. Sparks and fire lit the sky, each clash shaking heaven and earth. Vu's body convulsed, blood pouring from his wounds, but he screamed through the pain, "I won't let you destroy everything." The chain wrapped around him, then surged outward, plunging through the Warden's chest. Green fire erupted, consuming his monstrous limbs. The Warden shrieked, 1,000 mouths roaring at once. "No, I cannot be defeated by a mortal." Vu pulled the chain tighter, his voice breaking into a howl. "If you won't die, then you'll be bound for eternity." The chain constricted, green fire exploding across the Warden's body. Limbs tore away, eyes burst, blood poured in rivers. With a final scream, his form exploded, crimson smoke scattering into the night. But the bridge could no longer withstand the battle. With a thunderous crack, it gave way entirely. Stones fell in cascades, swallowed by the river of forgetfulness. Vu was dragged down as well. The chain blazed, pulling him into the abyss. His last sight was the heavens splitting open, a pale light shining faintly through the blood-red sky. Then darkness, and the endless toll of a funeral bell. The final battle on Nehi Bridge had ended, with the bridge and both combatants swallowed by the abyss. Chapter 26. The shores of the river of forgetfulness. The roar of the river of forgetfulness thundered in Nguyễn Vu's ears. His body drifted between life and death, carried by waves of blood and sorrow. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying upon a jagged black rock at the river's edge. The river churned endlessly, its waters thick and red, faces of the damned rising and sinking, screaming before being dragged down again. Skeletal hands clawed at the surface, but none could escape. Above the waters stretched only emptiness. Nehi Bridge was gone, nothing remained but drifting ash, glowing faintly as it fell into the abyss. Vu groaned, clutching his chest, the chain still coiled around him, its flame weak, flickering as if on the verge of dying out. His body ached, blood soaking his clothes, each breath felt like fire. In the distance, a soft voice spoke, low and sorrowful, "You have reached the river of forgetfulness. Every soul that comes here must drink, and let go." Vu turned his head. There, beside a stone table, sat an old woman. Her hair was white as snow, her face etched with countless lines, her eyes deep and timeless. Before her boiled a cauldron of bronze, steam rising in pale clouds. The scent that drifted from it was strange, sweet, yet heavy, cloying, almost unbearable. She ladled the steaming liquid into a bowl and placed it gently on the table. "I am Meng Po," she said softly. "It is my task to serve the soup of forgetfulness. Once drunk, no soul remembers pain." hate, or love. Only then can they walk the cycle of rebirth. Vu froze. His heart thudded painfully. He had heard the legends. But to see her here, at the very river's edge, filled him with dread. Meng Po studied him, her eyes sorrowful, yet steady. You are not like the others. The chain has chosen you. If you drink, you will forget everything. You will be free to live again as a man. But if you refuse, her voice lowered, heavy as stone, you will remain bound. You will inherit the chain and walk the endless path of judgment. Vu stared at the bowl, steam rising like ghostly hands toward him. The scent seeped into his chest, pulling at his heart. His hands trembled violently. Memories flooded him. His mother's frail body, coughing in the dark. Friends he had lost. Faces staring from the abyss. Villages burning. Children screaming. The judge's last words, choose. Nguyen Vu. Tears spilled from his eyes. He clutched the chain in both hands, his breath ragged. What am I supposed to choose? He whispered hoarsely. Meng Po did not answer. She only watched, her ancient gaze heavy with sorrow. Behind him, the river of forgetfulness roared, its cries urging him to drink. From the distance, the toll of the funeral bell echoed, as if time itself demanded a decision. On the table, the bowl steamed, waiting. One choice, to drink and forget. The other, to remember and bear the chains forever. Chapter 27. The Choice of Fate. The steam from the bowl curled upward, pale and sweet, wrapping around Nguyen Vu's face. The fragrance was strangely soothing, yet beneath it lay a chill that cut to the bone. Meng Po's voice was calm, almost tender. Drink, and you will forget everything. No more blood, no more screams. You will return to life, clean and free. Refuse, and you will never again know peace. Vu's hands trembled as he lifted the bowl. The warm vapor brushed his lips, and for a fleeting moment, he longed to surrender, to let it all vanish into nothing. But the chain at his side shuddered violently. Its links clattered, green fire flaring, and the voices of the bound souls howled in his mind. You cannot escape. You saw us. You heard us. You cannot forget us. Vu gasped, dropping the bowl. It clattered against the stone, the liquid spilling across the ground, hissing as though alive. His tears fell hot against his face. He shouted, his voice raw and broken. If I drink, who will free them? If I forget, who will remember their pain? Who will judge in my place? For a long moment, Meng Po only watched. Then she nodded slowly, a weary smile crossing her ancient face. You have chosen. Vu grasped the chain in both hands, pressing it against his chest. Blood seeped from his skin as the links seared into him. His voice rose in a scream, half agony, half defiance. Then I will remember. I will carry their voices, their blood, their hatred. From this day, I am the one who binds the dead. The chain erupted in green fire, engulfing him. Sparks rained across the shore, burning so bright they illuminated the river of forgetfulness itself. The countless faces in the water shrieked, bowing toward him. On his forehead burned a mark, dark, jagged, the sigil of the judge. Meng Po whispered, her eyes reflecting the fire. From this moment forth, you are the new soul-hunting judge. Vu stood. His body was torn, his eyes swollen from tears. But his gaze was cold, steady, burning with green fire. The chain wrapped around him like a living serpent, its weight no longer crushing, but part of him. The toll of the funeral bell resounded through the 10 courts, carrying far into the living world. Immortal no more, Nguyen Vu had become the heir of the soul-hunting judge. Chapter 28. The Soul of His Mother. The river of forgetfulness grew quiet, but within Nguyen Vu the chain burned fiercely, eager for its first judgment. Its links rattled, pulling him toward a shadowed path. From the mist emerged a lone figure, frail, hunched, her hair white as frost, her hands rough and calloused. Vu froze, his breath caught in his throat. Mother. The old woman lifted her head. Her face was lined with hardship, familiar yet worn by suffering. But her eyes, they were not the gentle eyes he remembered. They glowed faintly red, filled with sorrow and resentment. Her voice cracked, soft yet sharp as glass. Vu, the night I called for you, you never came. I died, alone, waiting for my son. The words struck him like blades. Memories flooded back. That night he had been out drinking, laughing with friends, while at home his mother had coughed and gasped for air until her final breath. He fell to his knees, sobbing, "Mother, forgive me, I was wrong, I was blind." But her face twisted, her eyes bled red, her mouth split unnaturally wide, and her voice became a howl. "You are a son without filial piety. You abandoned me, you must pay for it." From her body burst countless skeletal hands, pale and cold, seizing Vu's arms, dragging him down. The chain rattled, fire surging, ready to bind, but Vu froze, tears streaming. "No, she's my mother. I can't." The voices of the chain roared in his mind. A judge must not falter. All souls must be judged, even those of blood. He screamed in agony, torn between duty and love. His mother's face flickered, one moment monstrous, the next gentle and kind, as he remembered her in life. For an instant, she whispered softly, her voice like fading wind, "My son, sometimes letting go is the only way to be free." Vu's tears blinded him. With a howl that split his chest, he swung the chain. Green fire engulfed her form. She shrieked, torn between rage and sorrow, before dissolving into sparks that drifted into the river. Silence followed. Vu collapsed to the ground, clutching the chain, sobbing like a child. "I'm sorry, mother." Above him, the crimson moon shone cold, and the toll of the funeral bell echoed across the river, sealing the first judgment of the new soul-hunting judge, a judgment upon his own blood. Chapter 29. The Final Mission. The river of forgetfulness lay silent once more. Nguyễn Vu's tears had not yet dried when the chain tightened around his arm, pulling him away from the shore. He was carried through shadow and fire until he stood again in the 10th court of hell. The vast hall trembled, its pillars carved with countless screaming faces. Upon the throne sat King Yama, immense and solemn, his dark robe flowing like a tide. His eyes glowed like suns, piercing directly into Vu's soul. The chains at Vu's side rattled, their fire blazing higher than before. All wardens and spirits in the hall bowed low. Yama's voice rolled like thunder. "Nguyễn Vũ, you have chosen. You bear the chain. From this moment, you are no longer mortal. You are the new soul-hunting judge." The hall shook with the weight of his words. Funeral drums pounded, echoing through all 10 courts. Vu bowed deeply, his voice hoarse but steady. "I accept, but tell me, why does the underworld still tremble? The dead still rise. The chaos has not ended." Yama raised his hand. From the shadows above the throne, smoke billowed, coalescing into a vision. It showed the Hell Warden's monstrous form exploding at Nahi Bridge. Yet from the fragments of his body, a core of crimson darkness remained, a phantom, drifting within the river of forgetfulness, feeding on hatred, growing stronger. Yama's voice thundered. "The traitor has not been destroyed. His body perished, but his spirit clings on. A shadow of his will remains, gathering strength. If left unchecked, he will rise again, and neither the living nor the dead will survive his return." The wardens stirred in fear. Even the ox-headed and horse-faced guardians lowered their gaze. Vu clenched the chain in his fist, his jaw tight. "Then what must I do?" Yama's eyes blazed brighter, his voice like the toll of an eternal bell. "You must descend into the deepest abyss of the river of forgetfulness. Hunt his phantom, bind him with the chain, lock him away in eternal darkness, where even memory cannot reach." The drums boomed again, shaking the stone. Yama leaned forward, his gaze like iron. "This is your first mission as judge, and it may be your last. You cannot fail." Vu dropped to his knees, his voice cracking with both fear and resolve. "Even if it costs my soul, I will bind him." The chain roared, green fire bursting forth, as if answering his oath. Souls throughout the court howled in unison, bowing to the new judge. The final mission had begun. Chapter 30. The Depths of the River of Forgetfulness. The river of forgetfulness raged like a storm. Waves of blood crashed against the shores, faces of the damned rising and falling, screaming in unison. In the center of the abyss floated an island of ash, shrouded in black smoke. There, the phantom of the Hell Warden awaited, no longer flesh, no longer whole, but a shadow with burning crimson eyes. His laughter was like knives scraping bone. "Nguyễn Vũ, you think the chain can erase me? I am hatred itself. As long as souls suffer, I will never die." Vu stood at the shore, the chain wrapped tight around his arm, its green fire burning brighter than ever. His voice rang out across the river. "Hatred may endure, but it will not roam free. Tonight, I will bind you, for eternity." The phantom roared, rising into the storm. Shadows surged, forming claws, serpents, blades of red smoke. They struck in every direction, blotting out the sky. Vu lashed the chain. It split into 1,000 spears of green fire, piercing the shadows. The river boiled, souls shrieking as light and darkness clashed. The phantom struck again, engulfing Vu in a vortex of screams. Faces of the damned clawed at him, their voices tearing at his mind. "Let us live, let us kill, let us drown the world in blood." He staggered, nearly consumed, but through the torment, he saw the faces of those he had judged, his mother. The villagers, the children, the innocent and guilty alike. Their cries steadied his resolve. He roared, his voice breaking, "I will not forget you, but I will not let you destroy the balance." The chain blazed with blinding light, wrapping around the phantom. The warden screamed, thrashing, his shadow splitting apart. "No, you cannot bind me. I am eternal." Vu pulled tighter, blood pouring from his skin as the links burned into him. "Then you will be eternal, in chains." The chain constricted. Green fire erupted, consuming the phantom's form. His scream tore across the river, shaking the heavens, before fading into silence. The black smoke dispersed. The island crumbled into ash. The river of forgetfulness stilled. The faces of the damned sank, their cries softening into silence. For the first time, the waters lay calm. Vu fell to his knees, his body torn and bleeding, his soul heavy. The chain coiled quietly around him, no longer thrashing, no longer hungry. It had accepted him as its master. From the depths of the underworld, a funeral bell tolled, slow, mournful, eternal. The crimson moon dimmed, replaced by a pale, cold light. Nguyễn Vũ raised his head. His eyes glowed with steady green fire, his face shadowed by sorrow. He knew he was no longer a man. He had no home, no family, no future, only the chain, and the endless duty it demanded. He rose, step by step, walking into the darkness of the underworld. Behind him, the river of forgetfulness roared softly, carrying away the last ashes of rebellion. The soul-hunting judge had risen anew. The river of forgetfulness had grown calm, Nahi Bridge reduced to ash, and the phantom of the Hell Warden bound in eternal chains. Yet victory brought no peace. Nguyễn Vũ, torn and bloodied, eyes glowing with steady green fire, walked alone into the endless shadows, not man, not ghost, but something in between. He had lost his mother, his friends, and the fragile softness of his humanity, all sacrificed to preserve the balance between life and death. On the riverbank, the funeral bell tolled endlessly, while ashes drifted upward like freed souls. The mortal world remained tranquil, unaware that one solitary figure bore the chains, preventing the underworld's laws from collapsing. And so, within the eternal dark, the new soul-hunting judge was born, condemned to solitude, forever walking with the clatter of chains and the unending cries of the damned.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.